Israel just made one of the most monumental geopolitical decisions for itself and for the Horn of Africa, and that is the recognition of a small nation state called Somaliland.
Mr. President.
Mr. Prime Minister.
It's good to talk to you, and before anything else, I want you to know that I'm signing now, as we speak, Israel's official recognition of Somaliland.
Israel just made one of the most monumental geopolitical decisions for itself and for the Horn of Africa, and that is the recognition of a small nation state called Somaliland. Now, what exactly is Somaliland? Somaliland is a small self-declared nation state in the northwest of Somalia. It has declared its independence from the larger government of Somalia back in 1991, and it has been looking for recognition ever since then and never seemed to have gotten it. And that is until Israel gave it to them just last week. Now, why exactly did Israel recognize this state? Now, Israel will give you a cookie cutter response when you ask it that. It's just gonna say it's just cooperation, diplomacy, values alignment, and stuff like that. Remember how earlier we said Somaliland is located on the northwest of Somalia? Let's look closely on the map and see where exactly that is. Now, that is exactly why Israel recognized them and decided to cooperate with them. Somaliland sits on the Gulf of Aden, which is a choke point near Yemen, a very clearly useful for maritime security and things of that sort. Now, roughly 12% of all global trades go through Bab el-Mandeb Strait, and that strait has been extremely strained by the Houthi rebels' attacks over the past couple of years, who have been showing solidarity for the Palestinians who have been genocided in Gaza. And if you look closely, you'll see that Israel's only way to get access to the outside world is through that strait. Now, it is in their best interest to make sure that they have some kind of a regional control over that area, which they currently don't. Somaliland will give them access to that if they set up cooperation plans with them. Now, global critics of this recognition looked at it as hypocrisy, because on one hand, you have Israel, who is currently occupying a region or a state that has already been recognized by a majority of UN state members, do not recognize them, and that's the state of Palestine. But then they go across the ocean to go and recognize a small cutaway region in Somalia for strategical ties and cooperations, which is kind of weird. And that tells us that the story is not just about cooperation and diplomacy, there has to be something bigger at play here. Now, the easy question becomes, could have Israel gotten what it wants from Somaliland without going all the way to recognition? And a simple answer for that is yes, they could have. And there are numerous examples of them having similar ties where they're working covertly with many other countries without actually establishing real diplomatic ties with them. Case in point, their relationship with Saudi Arabia and many Gulf states who are currently not part of the Abrahamic Accords or any kind of a diplomatic relationship with them. Another good case of that is Azerbaijan, whom they have been having good relationships with, but they have not really set up any diplomatic ties with them. They've been doing security operations, intelligence sharing, and many different things on a military front, but no real diplomatic relationship with them, and nobody knows about this. They could have accomplished the exact same thing with Somaliland, but they chose not to. And the question becomes, why? Now, the easy answer would be, if they are the very first government that recognized Somaliland, Somaliland will feel indebted to Israel, which creates some kind of a trust between the two nations, allowing Israel to have a long-lasting relationship with that region and that government. They're gonna always be able to play the card of, I was the first country to recognize you, and if any country in the future was to recognize you and you were to become a full recognized government that is part of the international community, you will owe that to me because I got the ball rolling for you. And that will allow Israel to have cemented itself in that region for a very, very long time. And as we said before, having access to that area of the world is extremely crucial for Israel. As a matter of fact, it's extremely crucial for any country for that matter, because we're talking about 12+% of all global trades passing through that region, which is the reason why Djibouti has numerous military bases in that area to secure the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. Now, that, as you could say, is the public intentions that we know about. What about the hidden intentions? There have been numerous rumors going around saying that there is a Gazans relocation plan that's been ensuing, so much so that the president of Somalia himself said that there has been talks about relocating Gazans down to Somaliland and also establishing an Israeli military base in that area as well, both of which Israel seems to have denied at the current time. But we have seen many reports circulating saying that they plan on relocating 1.5 million Gazans to that region. The most straightforward intention that we can see is obviously establishing a military base, and the reason for that is because the Houthis, who are literally across a few kilometers across the ocean from Somaliland, are going to be the target of the Israeli attacks, because Houthis have been attacking and throwing missiles at Israel for the past year and some change, and they have went so far as attacking ships that they think are going to Israel, making that area extremely volatile. So much that many trades and businesses decided to completely avoid the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and go across Africa back to Europe again. If Israel is able to establish a military base in that area and cement itself, it's going to be able to say that they've secured the area and they've secured their trades with the outside world. Now, how did the Somali government react to this whole thing? Of course, they're going to condemn it. They're going to get upset about this whole thing and say that this is a violation of their sovereignty and their territorial integrity. And Israel responded to them and said, listen, we don't want any hostility or any fight with you, but this is just a value/cooperation plan that just seems to benefit both of us. Now, what makes this whole thing a little bit difficult to work around is the fact that Somalia doesn't actually recognize Israel as a state. So when Somalia demands Israel to respect its territorial integrity, it's a little bit difficult for Israel to do so, because Israel will say, well, you don't recognize me as a state, why should I recognize your territorial integrity? Now, what about the reaction from the other Muslim countries in the area? So far, we know that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey have condemned this move by Israel, and America has not made any sound about this whole thing just yet. They're probably sitting around waiting to see what was going to happen and scale it from there. However, there are rumors going around saying that the UAE government actually is covertly recognizing this whole thing. So much so that I've seen a report saying that the visa portal on the UAE government website does not show Somalia, but rather showcases Somaliland. So UAE may be on the verge of actually recognizing them as well. So far, what makes this whole thing difficult to work around is that we don't have a whole lot of stuff in writing. So far, all we have is the phone call that happened between the president of Somaliland and Benjamin Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel. We don't have anything in writing. We don't have any official documentation. All we have are reports, claims, and rumors, all of which seem to have some nibbles of truth sprinkled across all of them. What about the reaction from the Somaliland people themselves? The Somali people are obviously going to be ecstatic about this whole thing. This is the culmination of a dream that they've been dreaming of for the past 30 plus years. And to have somebody recognize you on the international front is a massive, massive accomplishment. So much so that people are going outside, celebrating, carrying out the Israeli flag publicly, which caused a massive, massive backlash from the Muslim majority nations who are telling these guys, how could you possibly betray us like this? Because many of the Muslim nations are looking at it as a betrayal from an Islamic lens, primarily because Israel is the same state that's currently carrying out a genocide. And Benjamin Netanyahu himself has been indicted by the ICC and the ICJ. And there is an arrest warrant out for him. And the big case that Somaliland has been making since the early 90s is that they were genocided themselves by the previous dictator that used to rule Somalia back in the 80s and the 70s. And the case against them, it is if you guys are saying that you have been genocided and you deserve a nation, how could you ask for recognition from another nation that's currently carrying out a genocide themselves? Which is a very, very difficult moral question to answer on their part. But nonetheless, what they were going to say is we need to make a distinction between religion and politics. And they make a good point about the hypocrisy of many of the Muslim countries in the area. Egypt was one of the first Muslim majority countries to ever recognize Israel, and it had been in cooperations with them since the 60s till now. Same thing can be said about the UAE. Same thing can be said about many Muslim majority countries in the area. And Somalilanders are saying, well, how could you guys call us hypocrites when you guys are not saying anything about the other Muslim countries that have been cooperating with Israel since forever? Why is it a problem when we do, but it's not a problem when they do? Which doesn't really answer the hypocrisy question on their part. However, it is pointing at a very good point, which is that many of the countries that are condemning this recognition and things like that, they themselves are involved already with Israel. Now, overall, this move is extremely, extremely massive on the Israeli part. Israel is now behaving as an actual leader, and they're saying, listen, I have the power to recognize nations and make some serious difference on a global scale. Even though Israel itself is not recognized by 28 countries in the UN, they are currently saying, we don't care about that. We have the power to recognize nations. We have the power to be a massive player on a global scale. Now, the global reaction so far has been pretty silent, which tells us that the majority of them just want to wait and see how things are going to play out. If they think it's a good idea to make that move and recognize Somaliland, they will probably do so. And if they think it's not, they're probably going to abstain and wait, which is the move that the United States decided to take. The United States hasn't made any official announcement on this whole thing. And as far as I'm concerned, Trump himself said, what is Somaliland? Which means that he's not really concerned about this whole thing, at least not just yet. But what do you guys think about this whole thing? How do you think this whole thing's gonna play out? And is this a good move? Is this a bad move? Is this gonna cause a massive geopolitical issue in the Horn of Africa? Or could this be the sign of something much, much more positive than that? Let me know what you guys think in the comment down below.